Let me take you guys back to 2008 when we almost witnessed one of music's greatest casualties. As you may know, back then Eminem had a serious drug addiction, yet it was probably a lot worse than you thought it was. In an interview with Vibe magazine in 2010, Eminem said that he would take about 10 to 20 Vicodin pills a day. And somewhere around 2007, Eminem decided to go to rehab to get clean. However, after suffering a knee injury that required him to get surgery in 2008, his doctor chose to not prescribe him any painkillers. This would lead Eminem to searching his own house for drugs that he hid in the past, saying, quote, "I started looking around my house to see if I had a stash box of Vicodin. I'm ransacking my house, finally find something in the basement, in a little napkin, 7.5 Vicodin, the big extra strength ones, and a few Valium." He ended up relapsing that night, and anyone who has ever dealt with a relapse for any sort of addiction knows that you tend to go on a downward spiral after that unless you're strong enough to pick yourself right back up. This wasn't the case for M though, and one night Eminem overdosed on some pills that he got from a quote-unquote acquaintance of his. "My doctor told me those mysterious pills were methadone, which is used to wean heroin addicts off dope," Eminem said. "The amount of methadone I'd taken was equivalent to shooting up 4 bags of heroin. Even when they told me I almost died, it didn't click." However, when he returned back to making music in 2009 after a small 5-year hiatus, Eminem was a completely different person. Not only was he finally clean from his drug addiction, but he was also really fat. No, but seriously, the funny, wicked, and vicious Slim Shady that we all knew and loved was gone. You can tell just from the stature in his interviews, he was more mature, more emotionally stable, a lot more serious. And he even looked different, and people began starting rumors saying that Eminem was cloned in 2006, so much so that he would even go to acknowledge this in the song The Ringer.
Back and said if I did that, I'd just be like everyone else in the fucking industry, especially an effing recovery clone of me.
Now this was also a subliminal diss to NF because people would actually say that he was an Eminem clone. But this leads me to the topic of today's video. Was Eminem better on drugs or off drugs? How has his music changed, and has it gotten better or worse? Well, Eminem started doing drugs way before he was ever famous. In an interview with MTV in 2010, Eminem said his first time trying Vicodin when he was only 24 years old. Eminem wasn't signed to Dr. Dre until 1997, and his career didn't really start taking off until about 28 years old. And Eminem would only increase his consumption as he began to grow to be one of the biggest celebrities on the planet. "It was easy in the beginning," he said. "I didn't really have the money to get involved with drugs. I'd do them when someone offered them to me. As my career took off and crowds got larger and life got faster, I reached out for that shit more and more. I used it as a crutch to calm my nerves, especially the sleeping pills." Now, to your typical Eminem fan, this is no surprise. Anyone who has ever listened to Slim Shady knows his lyrics were too cruel and unpredictable for someone to think with a sober mind. It was lyrics like these that made Eminem who he was. Crazy, no f***s given, and also being incredibly lyrical, backed by the amazing production of the legendary Dr. Dre. And the story goes that he was pretty much high as hell through the production of the Slim Shady LP, which were his first 2 projects that sent him on an elevator to mainstream success. The Marshall Mathers LP sold a whopping $1.7 million its first week of being out. Reminder that this is before streaming platforms and using album bundles to increase your sales, all that stuff. Even the biggest artists of today wouldn't ever come close to that amount of sales, even with their best work and the best marketing team behind them. So imagine being this successful as a habitual drug user, and then now having to deal with the pressure of all the media and label expectations, family problems, lawsuits, Michael Jackson buying the company that owned some of his songs after he dissed him, and all the other crap that comes with being an omega star celebrity these days. You could only think that Eminem was most likely not planning to quit drugs anytime soon. That is until the same thing keeping him going ended up slowing him down in the long run. In 2004, Eminem will begin to realize how the drugs he was taking were beginning to affect his art in a negative way. His creativity was at an all-time low, and the artists who made some of the most monumental tracks like My Name Is, Without Me, Real Slim Shady, and more would go on to make songs like this. If you think that was bad, wait till you hear the song Rayman, where Eminem spends an entire verse asking Dr. Dre if this is homosexual. I love that song though. Eminem said that when he goes back to listen to Encore, he himself can hear how high he was in the music.
I have made albums that definitely probably would not be the top of my list. Encore.
But don't get me wrong, this album also gave us some absolute classics from Eminem's catalog, such as Mockingbird, Like Toy Soldiers, and Yellow Brick Road. But it's safe to say, as a whole, it was easily his worst project at the time. It was a huge downgrade from the prior releases of MMLP and The Eminem Show. This is what fueled Eminem to get sober and clean up his act. He began to realize that long-term, drugs would do worse to his career than do good, and so the journey began. In the same Vibe magazine interview I referenced earlier, Eminem said, quote, "I had to learn how to write and rap again, and I had to do it sober and 100% clean. That didn't feel good at first. I mean, in a literal sense. I actually had to learn how to say my lyrics again, how to phrase them, make them flow, how to use force so I sounded like I meant them. Rapping wasn't like riding a bike. It was as much physical as mental. I was relearning basic motor skills." I find it interesting that Eminem himself noticed all the flaws that ended up showing up in his music after he got sober. There's so much debate with the Eminem fan base whether he fell off or he didn't fall off. I'm just glad that Eminem himself noticed that something was at least different. When Eminem came back from his hiatus in 2005, he did come back with a bang. He dropped a verse on what is now considered a classic song, Forever, off Drake's So Far Gone. Kanye himself had to rewrite his verse after hearing how hard Eminem went.
When I heard Eminem's verse on the Drake shit, I went back and rewrote my shit for 2 days. I canceled appointments to rewrite. I fucking care.
He also dropped a long-awaited album called Relapse in the same year, but something was different. Eminem was back, but his flows were not the same. His lyrics didn't hit the same. He began implementing this accent that he used throughout the entire album, which was sort of obnoxious at times. This is something Eminem himself reflects back on and doesn't understand why he did it.
Relapse is something that I looked at in a couple of years, went back to and cringed at. I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, I didn't even realize I was doing that many accents. I just started, for whatever reason, I just got into it and was just like...
You can tell that he felt a lot more free as a creative while he was under the influence. That's when he cared less. The lyrics seemed to be great, all while sounding as if he didn't put much effort into them. While this new Eminem was the opposite. He sounded very technical, almost as if he was trying to rhyme too many words, which made it harder to fully understand what he was saying the first listen sometimes. Nonetheless, fans were happy to see Eminem back with a new motivation and drive to stay on top of the game for all the people who supported him throughout his ups and downs. Just a side note, some of my personal favorite Eminem songs are on Relapse. And honestly, I don't even think he has topped some of those songs till this day. Another thing that got implemented into Eminem's songs after going sober was his voice getting a little louder. This is the only thing people really got on Eminem's back for on his next album, Recovery. He sounded a bit too angry at the world. He would just scream out his lyrics, not in a way that Tekashi 6ix9ine would, more so as if the beat was too loud when he recorded it. He would respond to these critiques in the song The Ringer.
Yeah, turn down for what? I ain't loud enough. Nah, turn the volume up, cause I don't know how I'm gonna get your mouth to shut now when it doesn't matter what caliber.
Recovery was a great album though. It dropped only 1 year after. This was a much more serious time for Eminem. He started taking the persona of being more of a motivational figure. Slim Shady and Eminem are now two completely different people. This Eminem was grown up. The rhymes weren't anywhere near as insane or witty anymore. Well, he did say lyrics like, "I got the urge to pull my whole dick from the dirt and fuck the whole universe," and the diarrhea bar always gets me. Basically, this Eminem was just flat out different, but it was kinda good. In my opinion, this was just before Eminem started to reach the corny phase. Eminem's Recovery was him proving that he still got it and working out the flaws that he had pushed under the rugs with the use of drugs. He understood how rapping was a lot different sober, so he had to adjust. And it's safe to say he's still in the process of doing so, at least in my opinion. Probably the most biggest change that Eminem's music encountered on the sobriety journey is rapping fast, like really fast, like so fast that if you slow down the lyrics of some of his songs, they're still hard to keep up with. I think rapping fast is cool, but almost every rapper who does it sacrifices lyrics for flow. Joyner Lucas does this as well, and as cool as it sounds listening to it sometimes, I just get bored by the fact he doesn't really have those bars that make you go, oh. It's no wonder these two are close, and Eminem has said that Joyner Lucas is one of the greatest rappers alive. I know I'm beginning to sound a little bit like a hater, but I digress. Last thing I want to mention is the wordplay. Oh my gosh, how can I forget the wordplay? Some of the similes and metaphors that Eminem began saying in his raps are so bad. So bad that if you type in Eminem's worst bars on any search engine known to man, there will be hundreds of thousands of links for you to click from. Most, if not all of them, are from 2010 till now. Kinda ridiculous, right? I think it's clear that although Eminem was a better rapper while he was going through it with his addiction, in my opinion, we love to see that he made it out of the struggle and continued to put an effort to grow and improve. He's definitely made it clear that he can still rap his ass off and master bettered his craft. I wouldn't ever wish that Eminem would go back to doing drugs just to become a better rapper. I actually would like to see him do more outside of the court now, sort of like what J. Cole is doing, putting other rappers on. He's tried it a few times and some of them popped off a little bit, but no one really blew up, if you know what I mean. Like, you remember Boogie? What happened to him? In my opinion, he had so much potential to be such a big artist, but I mean, that's a topic for another day. One thing you can take from this video is that drugs don't solve any problems in the long term, only in the immediate short term. There are plenty of examples of rappers and other celebrities who have never got involved in drugs, and you can see that they never had to encounter any of these problems. But let me know what you guys think. Did Eminem get better when he got off of drugs or when he was on drugs? What's your favorite Eminem album and why? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, thank you for watching. It's your boy Louaista, aka Canvas Man, and I'm signing off.